Pop culture pastor.
You know, Cody, it's also true here in our little town, Chanute, Kansas, that our best Chinese restaurants are also in Canada.
Bazinga.
That nothing against our fine eateries here in Chanute. They're actually pretty good. I don't mind them. But that's a funny line. Jamal gets the two funniest lines in the episode.
So I honestly didn't think you were going to start off with that one.
Oh, yeah. The other one's funny, too.
I didn't think you were going to start off with anything Jamal said. I actually thought you were going to start off with something Sweetie said.
What did Sweetie say? Jog my memory.
I thought you were going to tell me that some famous musician said you had big ears.
Yeah. There are two very interesting, seemingly unrelated conversations in this episode. We're going to get to those. This is Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs, and we are watching Justified City Primeval, episode 5. We on episode 5?
That sounds right.
Yeah. It's called, well, I don't remember what it's called, but it's episode 5. And I don't know, maybe on the outside, this is a slow moving episode.
You good?
Yeah, is You Good? Question mark. That's the name of the episode. I knew it. But I feel like we get a lot of character movement in this episode.
A lot.
For lack of action. And we're going to talk about it. So welcome. My name's Dave. Cody's here.
I am.
And this is what we do on Watch-Alongs.
So within my circle, there's a lot of people saying, where is all the killing?
Are you, right now, right off the start, are you into this? Like, I mean, it's been long enough for me since I watched Justified that I don't feel like it hanging over this one as far as I need it to inform this one. Like, I'm just enjoying this one on its own merit.
So I'm enjoying it on its own merit. And I mean, it's going to be different than the original Justified series because we're not in Kentucky.
Yeah.
We're in Detroit. He's literally not even like stationed out there. He just happens to be like caught in this drop off of a criminal, and then we want you to stay and work this case. It's just a one-off.
Yeah, and it's the interesting part is how he gets caught up in it, and now it's like he recognizes something in Clement that he might be singularly designed to take down, right?
Mm-hmm.
He sees the threat of Clement Manzel that maybe other people don't see. The thing that's holding him back now is he just doesn't understand how all this came to be. Especially they don't understand the motive. They keep looking for a motive. Now, the show made it look like Clement and the judge just happened to be a random thing, a random killing. I think they tried to make you think that. Do you have doubts on that?
I don't.
You don't. You think it was random. You think the show wasn't trying to.
Well, it doesn't make sense that Clement and his girlfriend had the discussion about, so we're going to follow this guy, or I'm going to follow you in this guy, and then we're going to take whatever he had, and instead the judge gets in the way.
Yeah.
I still feel it's very random.
Okay.
And that when you're a madcap, that's what you do.
Well, Johnny Tyler. Madcap. But yeah, so... and that's the part that's throwing Raylan right now is he's used to dealing with people like Boyd Crowder and the various enemies he's had to face where there was calculation involved. And with Clement, we've called him earlier episodes, he's a Joker-like character.
He's wild card.
Yeah, he's that's what makes him scary is that you don't understand what he's going to do. In fact, there's a scene in this episode that I wasn't going to talk much about with Sandy, his girlfriend, where he's very threateningly kind of like, do you like my singing voice? Like he's trying to get affirmation from her. And like, I was leaning forward towards the TV like, oh, Sandy, be careful.
You can't be the first one on the kill list.
Yeah. Sandy's too nice. Don't do it, Sandy. I mean, aside from the whole, like she was, playing like she liked Skinder, got his leg smashed.
Those things happen.
She's got a heart of gold, though.
She does.
All right. Let's just start right at the beginning of the episode. Raylan and Carolyn. Lawyer Carolyn. Anything that was very ambiguous at the end of last episode is immediately given definition as we see them in bed, waking up the next morning.
Canoodling.
That the word canoodling. Yeah. So it was clear they spent the night together. We get that right off the bat. We understand that's what happened. Their quasi flirtatious banter is very good. Both like, listen, Timothy Oliphant and Ingenue, they're great actors. And so their scenes together are pretty good.
I was ready to give Tim an Emmy right then and there.
He is anytime I start feeling like, does this show have some shortcomings? You just get a classic Raylan scene.
Yeah.
And it just covers up anything. Like, am I thinking this is, perfection for a TV show? No, but there's so much, but I love Timothy Oliphant in the character of Raylan Givens so much that every time I start feeling maybe that way, I get a scene with him and it's all good. It's all good. You're just on this ride enjoying that you get this character some more. He goes out to get coffee and he runs into Jamal, and Jamal becomes a bigger part of this episode. Jamal being Lawyer Carolyn's ex-husband.
And drive-by pastor. He had some funny lines.
You get the sense that while Jamal has done some bad things and has not been kind to Lawyer Carolyn, you get the sense that Jamal is not a dude you need to worry about, right? Even though they have this tense moment in the restaurant where they kind of have this moment where they're competing for Carolyn's affection. It's a dude moment, right?
Yes.
It's a peeing contest, we would call that back in the day.
Too much toxic masculinity for my friend, the lawyer.
She's, of course, having none of it and leaves the two of them in the restaurant where they immediately kind of settle down and start having normal conversation. And that's where we get the funny Jamal line of the best Chinese restaurants in Detroit or in Canada. He also drops a great one-liner outside of their house when Raylan first meets him, when he's trying to figure out who he is. And Jamal's, of course, not telling him. But he says, don't let this house fool you. This neighborhood can be hazardous to your causality.
That did make me chuckle.
That was great. Yeah, I did enjoy that. So Jamal gets some great lines in here. And again, you get the sense, I don't know, what do you think? You get the sense that while he's done some bad things, he really probably does care about Carolyn, understands he's messed up, but he has greed, and that seems to be his problem.
That he cannot overcome.
Yeah, right.
We go back to Jamal's house, and Jamal is
you're
good, dirty so-and-so.
You're almost believing him, though. Like in that moment when she goes back to visit him at his just terrible apartment he's living at.
Not the fancy house that she has.
He's embarrassed about it. You can tell. And you're just about thinking oh, look, Jamal really loves her. He's being so honest and truthful with her. And then Carolyn starts to notice the signs that he's got a chick living with him. Yeah.
And it's not his cousin or whoever he said it was.
No. There's various underwears around Jamal's apartment. And she's like, no, sir. You cannot fool me with your lies. And then they have this moment where she's done with him, which maybe that was the point of this whole episode with him, was for her to, because like she hits a definitive point in this episode that we'll get to. But she like tells him she paid the lien, and she's getting emotional. And she says she's flat broke. So she's flat broke. And then immediately after this, she goes to Sweetie and wants in.
She reached her threshold.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it sets up like the future now here with this relationship she has with Raylan, where they are trying to keep each other at arm's length. Like through their conversation, you can tell that, and keep their working relationship working. But we know that doesn't work.
No.
Take it from the pastors. That whole thing that they do in the movies and TV shows, like we can keep our work relationship work, even though we're, having this intimate relationship. Yeah, that never works.
I've seen it with Raylan too many times.
You think Raylan would learn? He's such a himbo.
That is a term the Utes use.
Is it maybe 20 years ago?
Within the past 30.
I used to be a Ute 30 years ago. But yeah, so we get to this place with Carolyn that's really interesting, where at some point she's going to come into conflict with Raylan because of the choice she's made. I'm sure of it, right? That's where we're going.
Conflict with Raylan, conflict with the justice system that she's wanting to ascend its ladder, conflict and corruption with the man that she hates to represent, Clement.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Well, she becomes the vigilante of the show, right? Because, we're going to get an interesting conversation about what's justified and what's not. And then we're getting it in display with Carolyn, because is it justified? Like, is she the best person for the job of this? Don't mind the thunder. We're recording during a thunderstorm. It's all right.
It's justified.
We're getting it in effect here, because is she the best person for the judge spot? Yes, probably. She's smart. She's intelligent. She's got a noble heart. But here we see her compromising her nobility in her heart to say, I need to be in that judge's seat. And her problem before this was her want to not get political, because that's where she sensed it got dirty. But now she's like, because of the events of this episode and everything that happened before it, she reaches a breaking point, like you said, her threshold, and now she's down in she's exactly what she told Sweetie in the last episode. Be careful down there, in the muck.
Do you think she's going after the lady that she's like, you're all about politics, why are you going after the judge's seat?
I mean, I think that's pretty clear, don't you think? Like,
that's the only name I could think of, but they could also introduce a whole new character.
Well, so what she says to Sweetie when she looks at that book, so Sweetie gives her the book to look at, and she says the whole city's in here. The whole city, which I'm assuming would include her friend she's talking to, friend in quotation marks.
Frenemy.
Who's playing the politics and going for that judge position, and who she clearly doesn't like. And so you would assume that since she's played politics, she's been down in that muck and probably, is present in that judge's book somewhere. Which, the little black book with all the dirty people in it who in big places, that's such a nice trope.
It is.
But I'm here for it, because that trope never gets old. Because, here's the thing about all this. Yeah. This happens out in the world.
If being a lifelong fan of college athletics has taught me anything, it is people be trading money for power all the time.
Yeah. And so here in the city Primeval, Detroit, we are getting a lesson in Detroit politics, the Detroit culture. And what we're seeing is Carolyn has been corrupted and decides to play the game. Now, does that raise Carolyn's chances of being offed? What do we think about that? Did her percentages for getting something happened to Carolyn go up this episode?
By the end of the show, she's definitely at higher risk.
Yeah. I'm worried. I'm worried for lawyer Carolyn.
Because what if it's a duel, or I'm going to shoot her if you don't put your gun down, lawman?
Yeah, I almost feel like it's going to be, since Clement is chaos, I almost feel like it's going to be one of those things where they have a shootout of some sort and it's not even intentional. And someone's going to die in that shootout, whether it be Sandy or lawyer Carolyn or Sweetie. It's going to happen. And I'm concerned. Let's talk about the DPD, the Detroit Police Department. They put Maureen in charge of the investigation.
Someone needed to.
We don't get a lot of the police department in this episode other than this one scene, really, to tell us that Maureen's in charge. And we get a nice conversation with Wendell.
He's back.
Wendell gets lines this episode. And so Wendell has a nice conversation with Raylan, and Wendell's got a little bit of the cynicism, the Detroit cynicism of like, it's possible we might not be able to get this guy.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah. And it's just a very little conversation, but it leads them to talk about tracking down the original police officer detective that took down Clement the first time.
Which I'd been wondering, why do they keep bringing this Joe Schmo up?
Yeah. They spend a good portion of the episode looking for him. They have a run-in with his ex-wife, who is not pleased to see them.
Not at all.
And does not want to hear about her ex-husband, whom she assumes, did he die? Good. But then they're like, no.
He's still amongst the living, presumably.
Let's talk about Clement and Sweetie. They spend a lot of time this episode, other than the Clement Sandy moment that creeped me out, and I thought Sandy was in trouble.
So Boyd Holbrook, who plays Clement, he just might be an all-time good villain actor.
Yeah, he's really good.
I mean, I was watching this episode and I'm like, okay, so Logan, bad guy. Sandman, bad guy. This show, bad guy. Indiana Jones movie that wasn't good, he was the best part, bad guy.
He should have had a bigger part in that movie.
Like, if they were smart, they would have cast him as Indy, and we would have just redone the whole franchise.
Right. I think he could pull it off. I'm liking what we're seeing of Boyd Holbrook in the role of Clement Mansell. We're seeing a little too much of him in his tidy whities. My wife, at one point in this episode near the beginning, when we see him, in his kimono and his tidy whities, like, why do they keep doing this?
Because maybe he's a big fan of King of the Hill.
I continue to stand on the knowledge of, like, can you even still buy tidy whities? Like, where's he getting these?
It's great fashion sense. If you're going to go the cultural appropriation route.
I don't know.
And then it just seems fitting for him being an Okie in the big city.
Yeah.
So I was okay with it. Although I'm like, you can put on pantalones at any time.
Anytime, bro. I'm seeing a little too much of Boyd Holbrook as Clement Mansell. Clement and Sweetie start their shakedown procedures, right? So they pick out a name in the book. They pick out a guy by the name of Bulldozer Burt.
Tobias!
Played by David Cross, who played Tobias Funke in Arrested Development. Welcome sight. As soon as he got on screen, I was like, oh, never nude.
Yes. I said the same thing, and Leah's like, what? And I'm like, he's never nude.
Yeah. He's got the beard, so he's a little harder to recognize, but
a little bit.
David Cross, and makes me think that they got a real dude to play this guy. Is he going to show back up later?
Maybe he is more of a hardened criminal than they anticipate.
Yeah. So they're basically they get in touch with this guy. They let him know that, hey, we've got some information. incriminating you. Meet us at your house. They pull up to the guy's house. The lawn people are there. And that allows Sweetie and Clement to have this moment in the car waiting for the lawn people to leave because they don't want anyone there while they're shaking them down. And Sweetie tells the first of the two interesting stories that don't seem to have anything to do with the plot. Sweetie tells this story where he gets woken up by a friend to go have a jam sesh with Miles Davis.
If peeing your pants is cool, then I'm Miles Davis.
That's a deep cut.
It is.
Deep cut. Oh, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. Let's go. But yeah, so he tells this story about jamming with Miles Davis. And we know Clement is at least a music aficionado. He may not be able to sing, but he knows his tunes.
American Idol. That's what I'm hearing every time he sings.
He knows his stuff. And so it's interesting because he's listening to this story. He's throwing in a comment here and there, and he's like, this is a big deal. Like he's understanding the importance this has in Sweetie's life. And Sweetie ends up saying, as Miles said, you have big ears, which that's a big moment because like to feel seen by someone like Miles Davis must have been huge. Even if they're pointing out like a flaw.
Yeah.
That still must have been huge. But then I'm wondering what this has to do with anything. And then Clement asks him, what made you think of that story? And then that eeriness is back of like, oh yeah, what was that about? And introduces this little crumb of Clement's, unpredictability. Like, is he going to tie something to that story that maybe Sweetie didn't mean? I don't know. What'd you think of all that?
I think maybe Clement's picking up that Sweetie has some ulterior motives. Mm-hmm. And so if there's something deep and profound that can be like chiseled out of that story to keep him well aware, he's going to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. This whole shakedown scene was like well worth everything else in the episode for me, just because like you do get the two differing positions on how to do this shakedown. Mm-hmm. And you also see Clement recognize, oh, there's more than $10,000 here.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sweetie is really going into this with the idea of like, hey man, this is like preseason football.
Yes.
We're just working this out, seeing how we can do this. And so for him, it's not really about how much money they're going to get on this score. You're just about perfecting the scheme.
Seeing if the judge's information's correct.
Yeah.
Like working out all the little kinks.
Yeah. But Clement locks on this painting. And at first I thought, is he looking for a safe? But no, he just locks onto this painting that's clearly some sort of masterpiece of a painting. I'm not familiar with it. I don't even know if it's a real painting that exists out in the real world.
At first, when he locks onto the painting, I'm like, that kind of looks like Oklahoma.
Yeah, it kind of looks like an Oklahoma farmhouse, which is interesting too, right?
Yes.
Because later on, after Sweetie settles for $10,000, after Clement says, they discuss it a little bit. Clement's not fully on board. Clement wants the big score every time. We see Clement go back, and he's clearly come in the middle of the night and frightened Bulldozer Burt and was walking out with that painting.
Someone needed to.
Yeah. By the way, at no point do we feel a lot of sympathy for Bulldozer Burt.
No.
You're pretty clear that he's been involved in some shady things too. Maybe everyone in Detroit is. I don't know.
He's involved in shady things. He thinks he's better than a lot of people based off like the phone call and the meeting he's at. And then he keeps trying to lowball these two that are doing the shakedown, and it doesn't work out in the long run. Although I wonder if Clement going back is going to be a triggering event.
Yeah, I'm wondering where that's going. That's clearly going to be an event that has meaning later. We're meant to know that Bulldozer Burt has plenty of money because the way he's negotiating with them and keeps going up like it's nothing tells you that Bulldozer Burt doesn't really care about what money he's going to give to them. He's just trying to get them out of his house. And so, I think Bulldozer Burt has all the monies and doesn't really care, which is what Clement was picking up on. The only major other thing that happens in this episode is Raylan finally tracks down Ray Cruz. Now, Ray Cruz is the detective who first put Clement Mansell away. And also, side note, is the actual main character from Elmore Leonard's original book.
City Primeval.
Yep. And he's the actor, the same actor that played this character in the J-Lo movie based on Elmore Leonard's writing, Out of Sight. So same dude.
Man, I did not watch that one.
Yeah, I watched it, but it's been so long time ago. But it's just interesting to note, like, hey,
because I also wonder if I was at my point of if J-Lo's in it, is it going to be good? Is it going to be good?
Out of Sight was actually pretty good if I remember right, and not just because it had the late Keith Loneker in it, who was a KU football player and just all in all really great dude. But yeah,
you didn't know you were going to get this information.
You didn't, but Keith Loneker deserves to get mentioned because he was a great dude, and I miss him. But yeah, he sits down, or actually Ray Cruz sits down with him, meets Raylan at a bar, and what we see immediately is Ray Cruz is super cynical. Like, he's kind of the antithesis to Raylan at this point. So, right, like as Raylan, we see a Raylan who's older and maybe softened by his daughter and his family, and he's come a long way in the softening direction. We see Ray Cruz, who has gone the opposite direction. He's super cynical. And Ray tells a story of the second story we get in this episode, but this one has a lot more meaning than the first one, right? So he's telling a story of kind of like a long lost arch nemesis for Ray Cruz, who came to his home to what sounds like to maybe bury the hatchet, right? He says something about like he was tired of a life of crime. And we're sitting in my basement and we're talking and having a drink. And he gets up to go behind the bar to get a drink, refill. And I think he's going for the gun behind the bar. And so I shot him, killed him right there on the spot. And Raylan says, well, it was justified.
You do what you have to do.
Right? It's justified, trademark TM. You know, like, yeah, that's this show. But then he says something really interesting. He says, nah, he was going for a bottle opener. And then he adds on to it by saying, I sleep like a baby at night. Never felt guilty. And maybe that's where we're heading with Raylan. I want to see what conclusion you drew from that. Because for me, I felt like, oh, is this the choice Raylan's headed towards?
I think that he will be faced with it, but I think that the only way he's killing Mansell or anyone involved with this is if there's a gun being pulled.
Yeah. Don't you find it interesting, though? We've compared Clement Mansell to the Joker. If I'm not mistaken, the end of the 1989 Batman.
Oh, this is many moons ago. But
he's on top of the building, and you think he's reaching for a weapon, and he's really reaching for like the laugh box.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, Batman doesn't care. He thinks he's reaching for a weapon, knocks him off the building. He falls to his death. And isn't it interesting that that's who we've been kind of comparing Clement Mansell to? Now we get this story of the same type of situation. I thought he was reaching for a gun. It turns out he's reaching for a bottle opener.
A church key, as kids call it.
Does this show end with Clement Mansell reaching for something that's not a weapon, but Raylan doesn't really know that and having to kill him? And then he's left with the is this foreshadowing? I guess is what I'm saying.
I think that he'll be in a situation similar, but I don't think he'll end up doing it.
Interesting.
Or
it'll actually be justified. TM trademark.
There will actually be a gun and he'll be a little slow.
Ooh. You might wing him.
Mm-hmm.
He might get injured. Yeah. Okay. It was really interesting. Those two stories by Sweetie and by Ray Cruz, man, they felt like the acting work doing them. Of course, those are great actors, great character actors that have been around for a long time. And they shine in those scenes, and those scenes feel we don't really get any real action scenes, but those two scenes where those two men tell those stories feel intense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was impressed. I was impressed with the acting work in this episode and the fact that I felt like it was a tense episode and it really had no action.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of negative views online about this episode, and I'm like, y'all are haters. Knock it off.
Yeah, I think maybe this is an area where the comic book movies have kind of messed us up a little bit. Like if there's not, like punch, pow, boom, like somehow it's a boring episode. And I didn't get that at all. I love this episode.
I'm like, Raylan wasn't always killing people.
Right.
Like, the end of the first episode of season 1, yes, we killed the guy in Miami, but he was really going for his gun.
Mm-hmm. It's justified, trademark TM.
It was justified. But, like, he's not killing everyone for 6 seasons.
Right. So let's check in on our death odds. As we've been going back and forth from Sweetie to Sandy on who's most likely to not make it to the end of this. We introduced Carolyn into these proceedings now. Did she pass them? I'm kind of still leaning towards Sweetie.
Well, I think it's going to be multiple people, and I still have Maureen as a person going down.
Yeah, I feel like, yes, one of the DPD people is going to get it. Is going to buy the farm.
You better not make it Wendell.
I feel like if it's Maureen, they're just going for extra tragic. It should be the other dude who nobody likes.
Who got kicked off the case.
But yeah, if it's Maureen or Wendell, I'm not going to be a happy guy.
Riot.
I still think Sweetie's the best bet at this point. I just don't see how this ends well for Sweetie.
It's happening.
Or Sandy. Sandy, big odds too. But Lawyer Carolyn climbed the charts this week. I'm worried for Lawyer Carolyn as well. Who's the winner of the episode, Cody?
That would be Vondi Curtis Hall.
Yeah.
A.K.A. Sweetie.
Oh, man. He's such a good actor, dude. And he's one of those guys you've seen in so many things. It'd be hard to just come up with one movie that you've seen him in.
Yeah.
Because he's just been in so much. But, man, is he really good.
Literally, the Miles Davis story alone.
Yeah.
Pure gold.
Yeah. I want to echo because I just love Vondi Curtis Hall. I think with the work he's doing is amazing. But I'll be different just to make it so we're different. And I'm going to give my winner of the episode to Arrested Development fans who get some David Cross.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Never knew. And he should be like, I keep thinking, man, he's got to appear again. They wouldn't just get him for that spot for just that one episode, right?
Well, the thing is, so
we got some IMDb cheating.
I'm not going to cheat on this one. But his character, the story around his crime was a set of murders. So, whether he gets his hands dirty or not, I think he'll be working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because you don't just steal a fine painting that reminds Clement of his mom that got sucked up in a twister.
Dude is a real estate agent, and his nickname is Bulldozer.
Yeah.
That tells you maybe that he's got some cards left to play. Who's the loser of this episode, Cody?
Not the actress, but the character. Willa Givens.
Poor Willa.
She gets too sassy through text message. I'm like, do you know that your dad is single-handedly saving Detroit by himself?
He's a hero, I tell you. Maybe not a very good dad, but that is beside the point, young lady. Yeah, poor Willa.
You don't get sassy through text.
I laughed out loud that was a perfect teenager text, though.
It was.
Like, that was so legitimately like the most realistic thing in the entire episode was that text back to Raylan. And he handled it with aplomb. You could tell it hurt. It hit deep, and he shook it off.
It hurt me that it hurt him.
Loser of the episode, I'm gonna go with everyone on the Detroit Police Department. Why? Like, what happened? We didn't see any of them. We get this weird scene at the beginning where they make a big deal about Maureen being on the case, and then nothing for the rest of the episode. That was weird, right? Like, why include that at all? Why not come up with that at the beginning of the next episode?
Because it's going to set up, because we didn't get anything from the Albanian mob either.
Yeah.
So they're coming back with vengeance.
Gosh, we're going to get a giant crossfire.
Maybe your least favorite Detroit cop goes down in a blaze of glory.
And probably Maureen. Doggone it. All right. What did you guys think of the episode? Cody, we'll ask you, how many Stetsons out of 10?
It was a solid 7.5 to 8.
Yeah. I'm giving it an 8. I thought it was a great episode, and I had to, it was when I was thinking about putting down some notes about what to talk about in this pod, when I realized, oh, there was no action in this episode. I didn't even realize it.
Very little. Like, oh, we're just talking a lot and flashing our black belts.
Yeah. I loved it, but I will fully admit that your distance from the original Justified series may affect your enjoyment. Like, if you just rewatch the whole thing getting ready for this, maybe those are the disappointed people we're seeing online. But man, I'm liking this show.
I can honestly tell you, the last season of Justified, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah,
because that season had Sam Elliott, and he didn't have his mustache, and he was a bad guy,
and not enough Crowder's Commandos.
Yeah, no Crowder's Commandos at this point. So,
all right, what'd you guys think of the episode? How are we doing? How's the show doing so far? Justified City Primeval, how you liking it? Let us know on the social media posts on Facebook and Twitter for this episode of Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs. We'll be back next week, so you better be subscribed. And hit us up with a review, too. That helps us. And we'll see you next week for episode 6.